The lobby of Drexler Industries gleamed with polished marble floors and towering glass panels that caught the morning sun. Every footstep echoed like a drum beat of ambition except for the soft, steady squeak of Marcus Green's mop. Marcus was the first to arrive and the last to leave. He knew every creak of the elevator doors, every coffee stain hidden under the conference table, and every nameplate on the corner offices that glimmered with authority. Yet no one knew his name. At 48, Marcus had grown used to invisibility. When employees brushed past him with murmured good mornings that sounded more like reflexes than greetings, he smiled anyway. He needed the job. The pay wasn't great, but it kept the lights on in the small apartment he shared with his teenage daughter, Amaya. Few people would have guessed that 10 years earlier, Marcus had been an engineer, a brilliant one. He once designed adaptive circuits for a small aerospace startup. But when the company went under, his savings vanished. Then his wife's illness drained what little they had left. After she passed, Marcus lost not only his home but also his will to start over. The janitor's uniform was supposed to be temporary. Somehow, it became permanent. That Monday morning started like any other. Marcus pushed his cleaning cart past a cluster of employees gathered outside the main lab. Their voices carried an anxious energy. "The prototype failed again," one said. "Are you serious?" "That's the 5th time this week," another groaned. "The CEO's going to lose it. Investors are flying in Thursday." Marcus slowed his steps. The prototype, that word caught his attention. He'd heard rumors about it, an AI-driven robotic arm designed to revolutionize industrial manufacturing. Worth millions, it was the pride of Drexler Industries and its downfall if it didn't work. He paused to empty a trash can, pretending not to listen. Inside the lab, voices rose. Through the half-open door, Marcus glimpsed the CEO himself, Richard Drexler, pacing with frustration. "I don't care what it takes," Drexler barked. "Fix the relay issue, or this entire division is finished." The engineers nodded, faces pale. Marcus returned to his mop, but curiosity flickered in his chest like an old pilot light. The phrase relay issue triggered a memory circuits he'd once debugged, designs he'd stayed up nights perfecting. He shook his head. That was another life. When the crowd dispersed, Marcus lingered near the lab. The robotic arm sat lifeless on its pedestal, its metallic fingers frozen mid-air. A cluster of wires snaked from its base into a diagnostics console. On the screen, a tiny red light blinked steady, pause, double blink. Marcus frowned. That rhythm, it wasn't random. It looked like an error code one he'd used in a custom firmware design years ago. Could it be the same architecture? He stepped closer, hands resting on the mop handle. "Power feedback loop," he murmured without realizing it. "That's what you're doing, huh?" "Excuse me," a voice snapped. Marcus turned. A young engineer stood in the doorway, his ID badge swinging. "Hey, janitor guy, you can't be in here." "Sorry," Marcus said quickly. "Just cleaning up." The engineer eyed him, then smirked. "Sure. Just don't touch anything, all right? That thing's worth more than your yearly salary." Marcus nodded, silent. He finished his work and left. But the blinking light haunted him all day. That night, after most of the staff went home, Marcus wheeled his cart back toward the lab. The cleaning crew had access to every floor, a quiet privilege. He didn't intend to meddle, just to look. He stood before the robotic arm again, studying the schematics pinned to a corkboard. His fingers traced a faint smudge of ink where two circuits met. The grounding point, it was off by a fraction of a millimeter. A subtle error that could cause the exact malfunction they were facing. Marcus chuckled softly. "Whoever designed this missed a loop connection," he whispered. "Simple mistake." He imagined suggesting the fix. He could already hear the laughter. "A janitor thinks he can outsmart our engineers." So he said nothing. He packed his things and went home. The next morning, he was mopping the hall outside the lab when he heard two engineers arguing. "I swear, the relay's fine. Then why does the system keep freezing? Maybe the processor's overheating." Marcus couldn't help himself. "Maybe it's neither," he said quietly. They both turned. "Excuse me," one said, half amused. Marcus swallowed his nerves. If the backup board isn't grounded properly, it could send a feedback signal through the main relay. You'll see that exact error pattern. A pause. Then laughter. "That's cute," one said. "Thanks, man. We'll let you know when we need janitorial advice." The word stung, but Marcus only smiled. "Just trying to help." When they walked off, he stared at the floor, jaw tight. He'd been dismissed before by people who couldn't see past his uniform, his skin, or his title. That evening, while sweeping the empty cafeteria, Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from Amaya. "Dad, you okay? You sound tired lately." He stared at the screen, thumb hovering. "Yeah, baby girl, just working hard," he typed. Then he added, "One day soon, things will change. I promise." He didn't know how, but he meant it. And the next morning, fate handed him the chance to keep that promise. When Marcus arrived, the company was in chaos. The robotic arm had completely shut down and the investor demo was less than 48 hours away. As the engineers scrambled, Marcus stood quietly by the door. His heart pounded with one thought. Maybe it's time they finally see who I really am. By Tuesday morning, Drexler Industries felt less like a tech company and more like a sinking ship. Tension rolled through the hallways, whispered conversations, doors slamming, phones ringing off the hook. The robotic arm project was collapsing, and so were tempers. Marcus arrived early, as always. He could feel the stress hanging in the air like smoke. In the main conference room, engineers argued in circles. The CEO, Richard Drexler, sat at the head of the table, red-eyed and furious. 3 years of development, Drexler thundered. 3 years and millions of dollars, and you're telling me no one can find the problem? Silence. One of the senior engineers, a man named Alan Briggs, adjusted his glasses nervously. "We've run every diagnostic possible, sir. Hardware, software, everything checks out. We can't locate the cause." Drexler slammed his palm against the table. "Then maybe we hired the wrong people." Marcus, mopping just outside the glass walls, froze mid-motion. He'd spent his whole career watching people like Briggs smart, confident, and certain that knowledge lived only in degrees and job titles. He had once been one of them, before the world stripped the lab coat off his back and replaced it with a janitor's uniform. Inside, Drexler rubbed his temples. "If we don't have this demo ready by Thursday, the investors pull out. That means layoffs for everyone." Marcus hesitated. He shouldn't interfere. It wasn't his place. But watching them repeat the same mistake gnawed at him. He couldn't ignore it anymore. When the meeting ended, he walked toward the lab. The robotic arm sat like a silent witness to everyone's panic. He glanced around, empty. Then he set down his mop and studied the machine again. He crouched to check the wiring. His hands hovered inches above the relay board, tracing the cable layout from memory. It was just like the systems he used to design, smart, layered, but fragile if one link faltered. He noticed a small grounding screw on the secondary module, slightly loose. His engineer's instincts screamed that was it. He didn't dare touch it. Company rules forbade janitors from interacting with equipment. But what if he could at least point them in the right direction? Just then, footsteps echoed. It was Tom, the young engineer who'd brushed him off yesterday. Tom frowned. "You again? What are you doing near the prototype?" Marcus straightened up. "Just cleaning, sir." But I think I found something you might want to look at. Tom crossed his arms. Let me guess, another one of your janitor theories. Marcus ignored the sarcasm. That screw, the one near the relay. It's slightly loose. If the ground isn't stable, it could cause a signal feedback. That's probably what's freezing the system. Tom smirked. A loose screw? Seriously? Sometimes that's all it takes, Marcus replied quietly. Tom rolled his eyes. Fine. I'll humor you. He grabbed a small driver, tightened the screw, and rebooted the system. The lights flickered once, twice, and then, for the first time in days, the robotic arm whirred to life. Tom's jaw dropped. The machine moved fluidly, flawlessly executing its programmed sequence. How did you? He started, then stopped. Marcus smiled faintly. Just a guess. Within minutes, half the engineering team rushed into the lab, drawn by the sound of the functioning prototype. Cameras clicked, people cheered. For a fleeting second, Marcus felt proud, but then he saw Tom speaking to Alan Briggs, pointing in his direction. A few moments later, Briggs approached. You touched the prototype, he demanded. No, sir, Marcus replied calmly. I just noticed something that looked off. He fixed it? You're not authorized to even be near this equipment, Briggs snapped. If anything had gone wrong, we'd be liable. You could have caused millions in damages. Marcus's expression hardened. But it worked. That's not the point. Briggs hissed. You're a janitor, not an engineer. The words hit like a slap. Around them, people fell silent. Tom shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Marcus nodded slowly. You're right. I'm a janitor. But maybe that's the problem. Too many people here care more about titles than solutions. Then he turned and quietly went back to mopping the floor. That evening, Tom couldn't shake the image of Marcus standing there calm, composed, and clearly more knowledgeable than anyone gave him credit for. He stayed late, digging through the employee files until he found Marcus Green's profile. Employment, maintenance staff. Education, BS in electrical engineering, Georgia Tech. Previous position, lead systems engineer, AeroCore Technologies. Patents filed, 3. Tom's eyes widened. He's an engineer? He hurried to the CEO's office, knocking on the open door. Drexler looked up from his laptop. What now? Sir, I think you need to see this, Tom said, handing over Marcus's file. Drexler skimmed the document, then frowned. Why is a man with 3 patents mopping floors in my building? I don't know, Tom admitted. But he just fixed the prototype issue that none of us could solve. For the first time in days, Drexler smiled a thin, calculating smile. Bring him to me tomorrow. When Marcus returned the next morning, he found an unexpected note taped to his locker. Mr. Green, report to the CEO's office at 9 a.m. He stared at the paper, heart pounding. For a moment, he thought it was a mistake. Then he took a deep breath, straightened his faded uniform, and headed upstairs. He had no idea that what awaited him inside that office would change his life and everyone else's forever. When Marcus Green stepped into Richard Drexler's office that morning, he felt smaller than ever. The room itself was enormous, walls of glass, sleek furniture, and a panoramic view of the city skyline that screamed power. On the far side of the desk sat the man himself, Drexler, dressed in a tailored suit worth more than Marcus's car. Mr. Green, Drexler said, motioning to the chair across from him. Have a seat. Marcus hesitated, his hands clutching the brim of his janitor's cap. Sir, if this is about yesterday. Oh, it is, Drexler interrupted. You're the man who pointed out a critical flaw in a project my senior engineers couldn't fix. And you did it while holding a mop. Marcus sat down slowly. I was just trying to help, sir. That's what I want to talk about. Drexler leaned forward, studying him like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. How does a janitor know about feedback loops, signal grounding, and relay conflicts? Marcus's voice was quiet but steady. I used to be an engineer. Before Drexler Industries, before all this. I worked at AeroCore Technologies. We built adaptive circuit systems. Some of the same tech you're using here. Drexler's brows lifted slightly. Is that so? Then why are you cleaning floors instead of designing boards? Marcus hesitated, eyes lowering. Life happened, sir. My company shut down. My wife got sick. I took care of her until the end. By then, no one wanted to hire a man who'd been out of the field for years. So, I took what I could get. Silence filled the office. For a moment, Drexler's sharp expression softened, but only for a second. He leaned back. I'm not going to lie, Mr. Green. Your story's interesting. But this company runs on results, not sentiment. Anyone can make a lucky guess once. The question is, was it luck? Marcus looked him dead in the eye. No, sir. It was experience. Drexler's lips twitched into a half smile. Good. Because I'm going to give you a chance to prove it. Marcus blinked. Prove it? The prototype is functional again, but it's unstable. The code still hiccups at random intervals. I want to know if you can find out why. You'll have one day. I'll have one of my junior engineers supervise you break anything, he reports to me. Marcus's pulse quickened. Are you serious? Very. If you're as good as you say, you'll find the problem. If not, Drexler's smile faded. You'll go back to mopping floors. Deal. Marcus stood up, heart pounding. Deal. By mid-morning, Marcus was back in the lab, not as the janitor this time, but as the man in charge of fixing what no one else could. Tom, the young engineer, stood beside him with folded arms and a skeptical look. So the boss really thinks you can do this? Tom muttered. Marcus ignored the tone. Doesn't matter what he thinks. Let's just get to work. He studied the robotic arm's internal logs, scrolling through streams of data. The error patterns looked irregular, not mechanical, but software-based. He watched the numbers flicker across the screen, his mind reconstructing the system architecture. Something wasn't adding up. Pause it, he said suddenly. Tom froze the data feed. What? There. The arm's servo delay isn't constant. It's lagging every 2.4 seconds, but the code says it should be at 2.0. That's not a random glitch, that's interference. Tom frowned. From what? Marcus crouched beside the system's power junction, tracing the cable path. From that wireless diagnostic port. Whoever designed this didn't isolate it from the command frequency. They're overlapping. Tom blinked. You're saying the diagnostic feed is literally jamming the arm's signal? Marcus nodded. Exactly. It's fighting itself. He opened the system terminal and typed with the precision of a man who'd done it 1,000 times. Tom leaned over, watching in disbelief as lines of code streamed across the screen. Minutes later, the robotic arm moved smooth, precise, and flawless. It performed its sequence without a single glitch. Tom exhaled. That's impossible. Marcus smiled faintly. Not impossible. Just overlooked. 2 hours later, Drexler arrived in the lab, flanked by his senior engineers. Well, he demanded. Tom pointed. He did it, sir. No errors. The arm's running perfectly. Drexler watched the machine perform its final maneuver, then turned to Marcus. Explain. Marcus laid it out simply, no technical bragging, no drama. Just clear, confident logic. As he spoke, the room fell silent. Even the most seasoned engineers listened like students at a lecture. When he finished, Drexler folded his arms. So my entire team missed a cross-frequency conflict. Yes, sir, Marcus said. Because they assumed the system was too advanced for such a simple oversight. But sometimes, the smallest flaw is the deadliest. Drexler nodded slowly. You've just saved this company a multi-million-dollar contract, Mr. Green. Marcus tried to smile, but his voice was humble. I just did what I know how to do. The CEO studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he extended his hand. Then maybe it's time we stop calling you the janitor. Marcus shook his hand, stunned. For the first time in years, he felt seen not for his uniform, not for his mistakes, but for his mind. That night, he returned home exhausted but smiling. Amaya was sitting at the kitchen table, working on her laptop. How was work, Dad? She asked. Marcus hesitated, then said quietly, different. Better. She smiled. You look proud. He chuckled. Maybe I am. Amaya's eyes softened. Mom would be proud too. Marcus nodded, his throat tightening. Yeah, he whispered. Maybe she would. He didn't know it yet, but Drexler's test had only been the beginning. The next morning, Marcus would walk into work not as a janitor, but as the man who changed everything again. When Marcus walked into Drexler Industries the next morning, everything felt different. The same marble floors gleamed under his feet, the same security guard nodded at the door, but whispers followed him down the hallway. Heads turned. People who once walked past him without a glance now paused, watching. Is that the janitor guy? Someone murmured. Yeah. The one who fixed the prototype. They say he used to be some kind of genius engineer. Marcus kept his head down, clutching his worn mop handle like always. He hadn't expected fame, only a fair chance. When he reached the lab, the atmosphere was electric. The prototype was scheduled for its final investor demonstration in 2 hours. Every department head was present, dressed in crisp suits and nerves. Tom met Marcus at the door with a grin. They're all talking about you, he whispered. Drexler told me to make sure you're in the front row today. Marcus blinked. Front row? I thought I'd just watch from the back. Tom shook his head. Not today, man. You earned this. Inside the presentation hall, rows of suited investors waited. Cameras, lights, and screens filled the room. CEO Richard Drexler stood center stage, calm but confident, a man whose empire had been snatched from the edge of disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his deep voice echoing, for months, we've been developing an autonomous robotic arm designed to redefine precision manufacturing. Yesterday, we faced a near-fatal system failure. Today, that same machine stands fully operational. He paused, letting the moment sink in. And I have someone special to thank for that. Marcus felt his heart lurch. Drexler gestured toward him. This man reminded us that brilliance doesn't always wear a title and wisdom doesn't come with a paycheck. Marcus Green, would you please stand? Every head turned. The room erupted in applause. Some of the same engineers who'd laughed at him now clapped hardest of all. Marcus rose slowly, hands trembling. He didn't know what to do. Wave? Smile? He simply nodded in gratitude. Drexler continued, Mr. Green diagnosed a fatal signal interference flaw that none of my senior engineers could locate. Because of him, this technology and this company will move forward stronger than ever. The lights dimmed. The robotic arm came to life, gliding through its sequence flawlessly. It assembled complex components with fluid precision, the machine's every movement a symphony of engineering perfection. The investors cheered as Drexler proudly announced, Ladies and gentlemen, Drexler Industries' future. The applause that followed was thunderous. Cameras flashed. But Marcus wasn't thinking about fame or money. He was thinking about his daughter, Amaya, and how she'd told him not to give up, even when the world stopped believing in him. After the demonstration, Drexler approached Marcus personally. "You did good," he said simply. "The investors are impressed. They've just signed on for the full project." "That's great news, sir," Marcus replied. Drexler studied him a moment longer. "I've been thinking. You've proven you're more than capable. How would you like to join our engineering division officially?" Marcus froze. "Sir, are you serious?" "Absolutely. Starting immediately. Your title would be systems consultant, salary to match your experience. You'll work with my R&D team. What do you say?" For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. His eyes stung, and his throat tightened. I'd be honored, sir." "Thank you." Drexler extended his hand again. "Don't thank me. You earned it." As they shook hands, the same young engineer, Tom, grinned from across the room. "Guess I'll be working under you now, Mr. Green." Marcus chuckled. "Let's just work together." That evening, Marcus returned home to find Amaya waiting by the window. She ran to hug him as soon as he stepped through the door. "You're smiling," she said. "That means something big happened." He laughed softly, setting down his cap. "You could say that. Your dad's an engineer again." Her eyes widened. "Wait, for real?" "For real." She hugged him tighter. "I told you, Dad. Mom would be proud." He closed his eyes, holding her close. "Yeah," he whispered, voice breaking. "I think she is." Over the next few months, Marcus became the quiet legend of Drexler Industries. Some called him the janitor who saved the company. Others called him the engineer who never quit. But Marcus didn't care about titles anymore. He came to work early, still greeting the cleaning staff with a smile, still helping where he could. Sometimes, when he saw a new intern walking nervously through the halls, he'd stop to say, "Don't let anyone tell you where you belong. You decide that." And though he now wore a badge that read Marcus Green Systems Consultant, he kept his old mop tucked away in his office corner, a reminder of where he'd been, and how far he'd come. Months later, at the company's annual conference, Drexler introduced Marcus once again, this time not as a janitor or consultant, but as the man who would lead their next major project. As the crowd rose to their feet in applause, Marcus smiled quietly to himself. He'd once been invisible, the man everyone ignored. But through humility, resilience, and knowledge, he'd become something far greater, a symbol of hope for everyone who'd ever been underestimated. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes don't arrive wearing suits or badges.